Do you feel that sometimes the universe is trying to tell you something? Well, that happened to me today, and I'll share you why. I believe the universe was telling me to make this video about the sleep honeymoon, why it happens, why it ends, and how we can meet this to have that honeymoon period become the rest of our lives. A little bit exaggerated, the last part there. Maybe it doesn't necessarily become a honeymoon period for the rest of our lives, but we can definitely leave the struggle forever. And that's why I'm here. That's why this channel here. So without further ado, I actually want to jump into why I thought the universe was telling me this today. In fact, it sort of started talking to me last week. I've had this idea for a long time about talking about the honeymoon, the sleep honeymoon, and this is when we have a period of sleeping well shortly after learning about insomnia, maybe finding this channel, maybe reading Set It and Forget It. But this has happened many times, and I meant to talk about this. And last week, there were 2 comments where people said that they had this happen to them. And then guess what? This morning, I was going through the comments, and there was a comment from Louis Abraham, and Louis said, "Hi, Coach Daniel. I started having sleep issues earlier this January where I couldn't fall asleep and be awake all night. This was on and on. This went on and on until I came across your channel, started implementing things that I see on your posts. Then suddenly I had 3 great weeks of beautiful sleep. Last week I decided to do an evening gym session, and that night I stayed awake all night." And then there was also Lara who said in a comment on Talking Insomnia 90, "I did the same as Saniya, all caps. I slept a whole week after reading your book, Daniel. I can't believe someone is so similar to me in terms of my insomnia." And when I saw these 2 comments, like one after the other, I was like, "This is it. I have to talk about this honeymoon period, the sleep honeymoon, right away." So this is what we're doing this right now. So we already defined what it is, and before I go into a little bit more detail, I want to point out 2 episodes. One was the one we actually saw just now, Talking Insomnia number 86 with Saniya, and also Talking Insomnia number 90 with Jacob. Those 2 episodes are episodes in which Saniya and Jacob respectively, share, how they came across the teachings here and how they had an initial period of really, really doing well and then seeing some struggle return. Now, again, we're going to break this up into A, why does this happen? Why does the sleep honeymoon happen? And B, why is it that it can end? And B, how do we meet the sleep honeymoon ending? So starting with A, why does it happen? Well, I want to say this: insomnia is a surface manifestation of fear. When we are anxious, it's a safety mechanism to have us sleep less because we're supposed to be alert when we are in some form of danger. Of course, there's no real danger when we have insomnia itself. It's just the fear of not sleeping is what keeps it going. And now the sleep honeymoon happens when hope/education leads us to have less fear, to be less afraid of not sleeping. And I put both hope and education there because sometimes, the education part can be relatively quote unquote superficial. That sounds like a little judgy, but I'll use the word superficial just to illustrate how, you can start reading Set It and Forget It, for example, and just after a few chapters, you can sense how, yeah, this all makes sense. And without really understanding, more in depth how sleep works, how insomnia works, how emotion works, just that notion that, oh, this is going to help me. This fills you with hope, and that hope sort of, leads to the fear melting away. And without having a full education, you just start sleeping better because there's less fear thanks to this hope, right? And the sleep honeymoon can also happen because of like more profound education. You fully understand it, and thanks to that, there's less fear. And as you can tell by the way I'm presenting this, if that honeymoon happens really mostly because of just hope, then it's more likely to end because we haven't really done sort of the inner work, like the full education about ourselves and sleep, etc., that leads to the struggle ending forever. Okay, so that is what happens. And why does it end? Well, I already sort of alluded to that. Why can it end? Well, I want to say that, in addition to what I just said, also the response to not sleeping have become an automatic and reinforced program. And it often takes time for this program to fade. In other words, when there is when this fear of not sleeping has developed, then perhaps for weeks, months, or years, you have had nights where you didn't sleep, and you automatically go into trouble, problem solving mode, thinking like, why did this happen? What did I do wrong? What can I do next time? And sort of, you know, reinforcing this program that when we don't sleep, that is a threat, that is a problem, and we have to do something about it. And if we've done this for a long period of time, then that fear is automatic. Is the fear and the reaction, the response, all of this is sort of an automatic program, if you will. And if you just imagine how this program has been reinforced by every night we didn't sleep well, you went into problem solving mode. You can imagine how this has been reinforced over a long period of time, and this program, if you will, can be sort of entrenched. And it just takes some time for that program to fade as you learn and as the fear fades. And as part of this fading process, if you will, well, then fear and doubt can resurface. And early sort of worry thought is like, was this too good to be true? Or what if something is wrong with me after all? Like it's kind of, those are quite similar. Can this really, can this be like, could it be this easy? If you have that thought, or if you have that thought, like, was it too good to be true, or could it be this easy? Well, in some, like, to me, it's like both and yes and no are true, and as a reply to that, because yes, sleep is that easy. When we're not trying to sleep, when we're not afraid of being awake, then it is, so it just happens all by itself. It happens all by itself. But is it too good to be true? You can also answer that with you know, yeah, it is too good to be true, because you haven't fully understood. You don't have the full education yet. So at this point, it is quote unquote too good to be true. Like it often isn't as easy as you just read, set it and forget it, and then the struggle is gone forever. Often it takes a little bit more inner work. So I think both of those answers are applicable there. But following up on that, why doesn't it end for anyone? Meaning the sleep honeymoon. Like, some people do say that they read the book, or they found the channel, and they started sleeping well, and that was it. They didn't have, like, their honeymoon didn't end. It became their new life for her. It became the end of the struggle forever. Well, I think there are two reasons for that. One is that their program, their fear response, if you will, it wasn't that entrenched. Maybe that person either hasn't had trouble sleeping for that long, or for some reason there wasn't that much fear there. So that can be a reason. Or, and I've seen this with, for example, Coach Michelle or Coach Beth, who both have their full stories here as Talking Insomnia episodes. For them, uh, things started getting easier quite immediately after coming across the teachings here, and there weren't that like suddenly the honeymoon ended. And I think in those cases and many others, it was because the inner journey, the starting to, like, looking at our emotions and exploring our thoughts and feelings, and this inner journey, it had already been there for quite a while. So the teachings here may have been sort of like the final piece of the puzzle or something like that. So those are two examples of when the honeymoon doesn't end. So it doesn't necessarily end for everyone. And now finally then, when it does end, when we have the sleep honeymoon and it does end, how do we meet that situation? Well, first of all, you've already found this video, which is super helpful. I'm really glad you found it. And I think probably already by this time in the video, you already have more understanding, and you can probably already divine where I'm going to go next. But I picked out three ways I think we could really meet this. And one is seeing that the honeymoon magic, came from the absence of effort. And the confusing part can be that it can seem to the brain that, oh, I figured it out, I found it. I just needed this book, or I just needed to hear that said, and that's it. That's hearing that, or reading this. That's what made me sleep well, made me have the sleep honeymoon. So why don't I have it anymore? Well, it wasn't anything that made you sleep. It was rather learning these things, or just hope, led to the absence of trying. And when there was no trying, when you weren't afraid of being awake anymore, then sleep happened all by itself. And to go, like, very similar to this is number two, which is understanding delegation. And I think this delegation concept is so helpful to understand. And it basically means that whenever we are trying to sleep, we're putting effort in, then sleep doesn't happen as easily, or maybe not at all. But uh, when we read, let's say somebody reads Set It and Forget It, and they sleep really well, then they can start delegating to Set It and Forget It. They think like, oh, this book made me sleep. This is fantastic. But when we delegate it to something outside of ourselves, whether it is a book or a medication or a supplement or something else like that, we think that there's something from the outside needed for us to sleep. We haven't fully seen that the magic is inside us all the time. The magic is always just inside us. So understanding that, aha, I think I delegated to the outside. I thought something made me sleep, but it wasn't. It was, again, the magic was all inside me, and we can just delegate to ourselves, to our brains, or to nothing, if we will. Like when the delegation doesn't become to something outside of us, that's really when, you know, the honeymoon comes back, if you will, and the struggle starts to really fade. And then finally, and I think this is important too, and number three, see the invitation to transformation and peace. Meaning, when this honeymoon period has ended, if it has ended, then it can be disappointing, but it can also be seen as, this just means that there's a little bit more of that inner journey for me to take. There's a little bit more self exploration for me to do. There's a little bit more for me to understand, a little bit more of education for me to do. And yeah, that can be disappointing because it was so easy and so nice when this honeymoon period happened. True. But this inner journey, if you will, that is what really leads to like the true change, true transformation, where you see that not only does that insight you get about yourself lead to peaceful sleep, but it helps in like every aspect of life. So I think seeing this invitation can really help. So yeah, with that said, let me know how this sounded to you. I love, as always, any thoughts in the comment section, and that's it. That's it for today. Again, hope it was helpful, and hope to have you back here soon. Bye for now.